I still remember the day Chloe showed up at my apartment, weeks after the divorce was final. She looked so small, almost fragile, wearing an old sweater I recognized from years ago, back when she was still the woman I married. She asked if we could talk, said she'd made terrible mistakes, that she finally understood what she'd lost, and wanted a chance to explain. I just stood in the doorway, looking at her, and said, "I forgive you, Chloe. I really do. But forgiveness isn't reconciliation. You made your choices, and those choices have consequences. I'm not one of those consequences you get to undo." It wasn't that long ago, not even a year, that Chloe had looked at me across our kitchen table, her fork still in her hand, the sesame chicken getting cold. She'd said, "I decide who I spend time with. Adam, you don't get a say." The way she said it wasn't angry or defensive. It was cold, rehearsed, like someone had coached her on every syllable. I remember just nodding, putting my own fork down, and replying with two simple words, "Your choice." What she didn't know then, what none of her new friends knew, was that I meant it in a way she absolutely wasn't expecting. See, Chloe had changed. Drastically. Over the past 4 months, the woman I'd married 7 years ago had undergone a complete personality transplant. It started subtly, the way these things always do. She joined this women's group, the Empowerment Circle. She called it a book club with wine. I didn't think much of it, Chloe had always been social. But this group was different. Its leader was Veronica. Mid-30s, divorced twice, no kids, ran a life coaching business out of a rented office downtown. Chloe came home from that first meeting talking about independence, self-actualization, and toxic patterns. I just figured it was new vocabulary, buzzwords to sound enlightened. But then the meetings went from once a month to twice a week, then 3 times. Soon, Chloe was coming home at 11 p.m., smelling like cigarettes and perfume that wasn't hers, talking about boundary setting. I'd ask simple questions, like if she wanted me to save her dinner, and she'd snap. "Stop trying to control my schedule," she'd say. Or, "I don't need you managing my life." These weren't answers. They were accusations. One night, I made the mistake of mentioning I missed spending time with her, maybe we could take a weekend trip like we used to. She stared at me like I'd just asked her to give up breathing. "That's exactly what Veronica warned us about," she said. "Partners who try to isolate you from your support system." I wasn't trying to isolate her. I was trying to talk to my wife. But apparently, wanting your spouse's attention now qualified as emotional abuse. The Empowerment Circle had 3 core members besides Chloe, Sarah, who left her husband because he asked her to help pay the mortgage after she quit her job to start a jewelry business that never sold a piece. Olivia, on her 3rd failed engagement, blaming every ex for not supporting her dreams, even though her dreams changed every 6 months. And then there was Veronica, the ringleader, collecting broken marriages like trophies. I met them once at a restaurant. Veronica dominated, talking about women needing to stop dimming their light for men. Sarah nodded like a bobblehead. Olivia chimed in with stories that all sounded suspiciously similar. Chloe absorbed every word like gospel. I tried to engage, but every comment I made was met with condescending smiles. When I mentioned my promotion, Veronica cut me off. "That's wonderful, but let's keep the focus on the women tonight," she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. I realized then that I wasn't invited to participate. I was invited to be judged. After that dinner, the changes accelerated. Chloe started dressing differently, not for me, she'd say, but for herself. That apparently meant low-cut tops and skirts she'd never worn. She bought expensive jewelry I'd never seen. She stopped texting me, stopped asking about my work, stopped caring about the little routines we'd built over 7 years. When I got home, she was already getting ready to leave for another empowerment session. I found receipts for bars in her purse, places she swore she'd never been. One night, I asked her directly if something was going on, if there was something she needed to tell me. She looked at me with contempt. This is what Veronica said would happen. You can't handle me being independent, so you're trying to make me feel guilty. I wasn't trying to make her feel guilty. I was trying to understand why my wife was becoming a stranger. But in her mind, every question was an attack. Every concern was control. I learned something crucial during those 4 months. The real warning sign wasn't just the late nights or the new clothes. It was how she started rewriting our history. Our 7 years became a narrative of oppression she needed to escape. Date nights became examples of me controlling her. Decisions we'd made together became proof I'd manipulated her. Our entire marriage got filtered through Veronica's lens until nothing good remained. That night in the kitchen, when she told me I didn't get a say, something shifted inside me. I'd spent 4 months trying to understand, adapt, trying to save something she was actively destroying. I'd made excuses for the late nights, the distant behavior, the way she talked to me like I was her enemy. But sitting there, watching her eat cold Chinese food with the same hand that used to reach for mine, I realized I was done fighting for someone who didn't want to be fought for. So when I said your choice, I meant it completely. She wanted independence, freedom from my questions, my concern, my presence. And I was about to give her exactly what she asked for, though not in the way she expected. She smiled that night, thinking she'd won some kind of victory. What she didn't know was that I'd already started making plans. 2 weeks earlier, scrolling Instagram late one night, I'd noticed something odd. Chloe had posted a story geotagged at the Copper Lantern downtown at 1:45 a.m. The timestamp was clear, the location was clear, and the lie she told me that night was clear, too. She texted me at midnight saying she was watching movies at Sarah's apartment and heading to bed soon. I took a screenshot, saved it to a folder on my laptop, and started paying closer attention. Over the next 2 weeks, I documented everything. Instagram stories at clubs while she texted me about quiet nights in. Credit card charges for lingerie she never wore around me. Her wedding ring sitting in the bathroom drawer more nights than it was on her finger. Every lie had a timestamp, a receipt, a digital footprint she was too careless to hide. The Thursday night before our kitchen conversation, I'd gone to the Copper Lantern myself. I sat in a corner, ordered a beer I barely touched, and watched. Chloe walked in around 10:30 with Veronica, Sarah, and Olivia. All of them dressed for a nightclub. I watched Veronica lead them to a booth where 2 guys were already waiting. Watched my wife slide into the seat next to a man who immediately put his arm around her shoulders. She laughed, touched his arm, leaned into him like she'd known him for years. Her wedding ring was noticeably absent. I didn't cause a scene. I took 3 photos on my phone, finished my beer, and left. The evidence spoke louder than any argument. So, when she declared her independence, I already knew exactly what that independence looked like. I already knew I deserved better than being treated like a villain in my own marriage. Chloe wanted freedom, and I was about to show her what true freedom actually costs. Chloe stopped asking where I was going on Saturday mornings. Stopped caring when I came home late. Stopped noticing I'd moved my clothes into the guest bedroom. She was too busy planning her girls' weekend to Lake Geneva, too excited about her newfound freedom to realize I'd already given her all the space she'd ever need. She announced the trip on a Monday evening, barely looking up from her phone. Veronica's organizing a wellness retreat in Lake Geneva next weekend, just us girls. I nodded, asked when she'd be back, told her to have fun. She seemed almost disappointed I didn't object, like she'd prepared a speech and I'd stolen her moment. What she didn't know was that I'd already made a decision. The week before the Lake Geneva trip, she bought new luggage, expensive stuff. Outfits I'd never seen, tags still attached, hanging in her closet like secrets. I watched her pack on Friday morning. Watched her fold clothes that cost more than our monthly grocery bill. Watched her tuck away jewelry that hadn't come from me. She left her wedding ring on the bathroom counter that morning, just sitting there next to her makeup bag. I took a photo, added it to the folder on my laptop that had grown thick with evidence. That Friday afternoon, after Chloe had left, I did something I'd been planning for weeks. I called David Thompson, a divorce attorney someone at work had recommended months ago. I sent him everything. He called me back within an hour. This is one of the clearest cases I've seen, he said. If you're serious, we can move fast. I told him I was serious. I wanted to file on Monday morning. I was done being someone's safety net while they practiced their highwire act without consequences. David walked me through everything, move half the money from our joint accounts, pack my essential belongings, prepare to leave. I spent Saturday doing exactly that, methodically dismantling 7 years of shared life. But the confirmation I needed, the final piece that erased any remaining doubt, came Saturday night around 11 p.m. My phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. The voice on the other end was male, slurred with alcohol, genuinely confused. "Hey man, is this Adam?" he asked. My stomach dropped. "Yeah, who's this?" "Look, I don't want any trouble, but I'm at this bar in Lake Geneva and there's this woman, Chloe. She's been all over my buddy Lucas all night and she told him she's separated from her husband, but then I saw wedding photos on her Facebook and I don't know. It felt wrong, man." I thanked him, hung up, and sat in the silence of my home office for a long time. This stranger, who owed me nothing, had more integrity than my own wife. He didn't have to make that call. He gave me the truth because he recognized something was fundamentally wrong. This wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. This was my wife in another city, without her wedding ring, telling strangers she was single, living a completely different life. Our marriage wasn't struggling, it was already over. I'd just been the last one to admit it. Sunday morning, I finalized everything with David. He'd have the initial paperwork ready by Monday afternoon. I spent the rest of Sunday moving money, packing my truck with 2 suitcases, and preparing the letter I'd leave for Chloe. No long explanations, no emotional appeals, just cold facts. Chloe came back late Sunday night, glowing and relaxed. She walked into our bedroom, noticed I wasn't there, and didn't even come looking. That absence of curiosity, that complete lack of concern, told me everything. Monday morning, I went to work early, met David at 7 a.m., and signed everything. He warned me it would get ugly, that Chloe would try to paint me as the villain, that her friends would rally around her. I told him I didn't care about the narrative. I cared about the truth, and I had mountains of evidence. That entire day at work was a fog. My boss, Mark, noticed something was off, but I told him I was fine. I wasn't fine, but I was determined. And sometimes determination carries you through when nothing else can. That evening, I came home before Chloe. I took off my wedding ring for the first time in 7 years. Felt how light my hand suddenly was, how strange it looked without that band of gold. I placed the ring on top of an envelope I'd prepared. A handwritten letter that said everything I needed to say without giving her the satisfaction of a confrontation. You wanted independence. You wanted freedom. You wanted a life where I didn't get a say. You have it now. The papers will be delivered Wednesday. Don't contact me. Don't try to explain. We both know what you've been doing. You're free now. I hope it's everything you wanted. I left the envelope on the kitchen table. The same table where she'd told me I didn't get a say. I took one last look at the house, at the photos of a couple that didn't exist anymore, at the life I'd built with someone who decided it wasn't enough. Then I walked out the door, got in my truck, and drove to the extended stay hotel I'd booked. My phone started ringing around 9:30 that night. Chloe's name lit up the screen 23 times before I turned the phone off completely. She left voicemails I'd never listened to, sent texts I'd never read, tried to reach me through social media I'd already blocked her on. But I was done being the person she could manipulate, done being the safety net for someone who wanted to jump without consequences. I'd given her exactly what she asked for, and now she'd have to live with it. Chloe spent the first week after I left trying every possible way to reach me. When that didn't work, she deployed her support system. Her sister, Rebecca, called me 8 times, leaving voicemails that escalated from confused to angry, talking about how I was cruel and unreasonable, throwing away 7 years over nothing. Her mother, Eleanor, sent a 4-paragraph text about family values and how disappointed she was. Even Veronica tried to reach out on LinkedIn, sending a message about how I was proving every toxic masculine pattern she'd warned Chloe about. I didn't respond to any of them. There was nothing left to say. David had the divorce papers delivered on Wednesday morning. According to the process server, Chloe answered the door in her bathrobe, looking like she hadn't slept in days. She signed for the documents, read the first page, and apparently sat on the front steps, crying for half an hour. Our neighbor, Carol, told me this later, said she'd never seen someone look so shattered. She tried to comfort Chloe, but got pushed away. A part of me felt bad for about 10 seconds, and then I remembered the Instagram photos, the lies, the wedding ring abandoned on bathroom counters, the men in Lake Geneva she'd told she was separated from. You don't get to destroy something and then cry when you realize it's actually broken. The legal process moved faster than I expected because Chloe didn't contest anything. David said that was highly unusual. She signed everything he put in front of her within days. Agreed to the 50-50 division of assets. Didn't ask for alimony even though Wisconsin law might have given her some. David thought maybe she felt guilty, but I knew better. She wasn't feeling guilty. She was feeling abandoned. And there's a critical difference. Guilt means you recognize what you did wrong and want to make it right. Abandonment means you're upset someone stopped tolerating it, and you've lost your safety net. About a month after the papers were served, I ran into Sarah at the Walmart near my new apartment. She was alone, looked exhausted, had that particular weariness that comes from maintaining a lifestyle you can't actually afford. She saw me, froze for a second, then walked over. You really did it, she said, not quite accusatory, but not friendly. You just left her. I looked at this woman who'd encouraged my wife to blow up her marriage. Chloe made her choices, Sarah, I said. I made mine. Sarah shook her head, started to walk away, then turned back. Veronica said you'd be like this. Said men can't handle women who know their worth. I almost laughed. Is that what you tell yourself about your ex-husband? That he couldn't handle your worth? Or did he just get tired of financing a jewelry business that never sold anything while you blamed him for not being supportive enough? Her face went red, and she walked away without another word. I felt bad for maybe 5 seconds. Then I remembered these were the people who'd poisoned my marriage, who'd convinced my wife that independence meant destruction. They didn't get my sympathy. The empowerment circle fell apart completely about 6 weeks after that encounter. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Olivia had gotten engaged again, this time to a guy she'd known for less than a month. When Veronica suggested she slow down, Olivia told her to mind her own business. Sarah apparently stopped coming to meetings after her landlord started eviction proceedings. And Veronica, the great leader, simply moved on to a new group of women to manipulate, a fresh set of marriages to undermine with her toxic philosophy dressed up as feminism and empowerment. Chloe was left with nothing. The divorce was finalized on a Monday morning in early September, exactly 11 minutes in front of a judge who looked profoundly bored. 7 years of marriage, all those promises and dreams, reduced to signatures and a gavel. Chloe sat on the opposite side of the courtroom with a lawyer she'd hired last minute, someone who looked fresh out of law school and completely overwhelmed. I didn't look at her once. David had advised me not to, but honestly, I didn't look because I didn't want to. The woman I'd married was gone. After the judge signed the final papers, I walked out into September sunshine that felt warmer than it should have. David shook my hand, told me I'd handled everything with more grace and dignity than most of his clients. I thanked him, got in my truck, and drove to work like it was any other Monday. Because in a way, it was. Life doesn't stop for your grief or your relief or whatever complicated mix of emotions comes with ending a marriage that should have lasted forever. About 6 months after the divorce, I got the promotion I'd been working toward for 2 years. Mark pulled me into his office, told me he'd noticed a significant change in my focus and energy. I didn't tell him it was because I wasn't spending all my emotional energy trying to fix a marriage that was already dead, wasn't walking on eggshells around someone who treated every concern like an attack. I just thanked him. I started dating again eventually. Nothing serious at first, just coffee with interesting people who didn't come with empowerment circles or a philosophy that independence meant destroying anyone who cared about you. It was strange at first, learning to trust again, learning to recognize red flags earlier. I ran into Chloe one final time about 14 months after the divorce, at a Walmart on a random weekday afternoon. We made eye contact across the home goods aisle. Both of us frozen for just a second. Then we both nodded slightly and kept walking in opposite directions. There was nothing left to say. No closure that needed finding, no wounds that required reopening. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how I handled everything. I tell them the same thing every time. She told me I didn't get a say in her life, so I gave her exactly what she asked for. Freedom works both ways, and independence means living with your choices without expecting someone else to catch you when those choices lead to consequences. She wanted a life without me questioning her, without me caring where she was or who she was with, without me being part of her decisions. I gave her that gift completely. It turns out it wasn't quite the empowerment she'd imagined when Veronica was feeding her those lines. What do you think about this story?